The teams with the most star-studded players usually win and compete for the championship year after year. Some Big Threes form naturally through the draft and are more successful, while others are formed out of nowhere. But shockingly, some Big Threes ended up adding problems to their team. These are the Big Threes in NBA history that disappointed their team. Welcome to NBA Jungles. First, let's talk about the Celtics. They won the NBA Finals after putting together their Big Three in 2007. Success is not guaranteed even with multiple All-Stars, which is why the Big Three has become the holy grail of every general manager since then. Even superstar Kobe Bryant was unable to save the Big Three from a terrible performance. The first attempt by Kobe to create a Big Three was thwarted by NBA Commissioner David Stern, who crashed the trade that was supposed to bring Chris Paul to the Lakers. Kobe did acquire an all-star point guard in 2012, but the fact that he was 38 years old was a major drawback. With Pau Gasol, Nash, Dwight Howard, and a former Defensive Player of the Year, Kobe Bryant, the Lakers had 4 All-Stars in the starting lineup. Meta World Peace predicted before the season that they would have the best regular season in NBA history by going 73-9, but his prediction turned out to be wrong. Despite being an All-Star in 2012, Steve Nash could hardly walk in 2013. The Lakers had an unsuccessful season going into the All-Star break, and Dwight was still recuperating from the painful back surgery that had reduced his speed by 30%. Kobe lost his cool when he realized they might not even make the playoffs. Bryant carried the Lakers to a playoff spot in March by averaging more than 40 minutes per game. Kobe eventually paid the price in the season's 80th game, as his 38-year-old body was unable to withstand the strain. His Achilles was ruptured, and the Lakers' hopes of winning another championship were also dashed. As soon as the Lakers' super team dissolved, the Nets decided to field their team. Deron Williams, Joe Johnson, and Brook Lopez were already a Big Three for the Nets, but their new billionaire owner thought he needed to make a big entrance. In one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history, the Nets acquired Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry, and other players. On paper, everything should have been ideal because every starter for the Nets in 2012 or 2013 had been an all-star. The Nets instinctively believed that they would rule the league in 2014, but that assumption was a grave error. The Boston-based players who had joined the Nets had a combined age of more than 100 years, and the team lacked a true leader. As the 6th seed after the regular season, Brook narrowly avoided losing to the Raptors in Game 7 of the first round. However, they encountered a 280-pound LeBron James in the second round, who mistreated them as though they were little kids on the playground. Pierce left after the season, Garnett was traded, and Brook's hopes of winning in the championship were dashed after just 1 year. With no superstars and no draft picks, the Nets were forced to choose between 2 undesirable options. Their fiasco demonstrated that winning basketball matches requires chemistry and that money can't buy everything. Our next Big Three, who surprisingly formed on the wrong side of LA, had the biggest chemistry issues. The Clippers had been the NBA's laughingstock for years, but after they traded for Chris Paul and selected Blake Griffin, the jokes stopped. The reason? It appeared that Chris Paul could simply throw the ball into the air where it would be slammed home by Blake or DeAndre Jordan. But despite all the high points and victories during the regular season, there was always something lacking during the postseason. After some honeymooning, jokes, and press conferences, it became obvious that this team lacked the X factor to win the championship. Each year, they lost early in the playoffs, with the most agonizing loss coming against Houston in 2014 when they blundered and blew a 3-1 lead. After that, the Clippers had plenty of time to let us down before Chris, Blake, or both were hurt in the playoffs. Finally, CP3 was traded after 6 years, signaling the end of Lob City. The following Big Three were never even given the chance to play as a team, but you can give NBA Jungles the chance to play in the YouTube League by liking this video and subscribing. James Harden requested a trade after realizing he would not be able to win a championship in Houston. The 3 best isolation scorers in the league were suddenly on one team, and the NBA world was preparing for another dynasty when Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant arrived in Brooklyn with him. With Harden on board, the Nets could always field at least one superstar on the court, and when all 3 played together, they were virtually unbeatable. The Nets had the best offense in NBA history when the Big Three was on the court, scoring 120 points every 100 possessions. The Nets easily defeated Boston in 5 games in the opening round of the playoffs against the Celtics, scoring an absurd 124 points per game. KD, Harden, and Kyrie, the superstar trio, averaged 85 points per game, setting a record for the most points scored by a trio in the NBA playoff series. But that is when the misfortune began. Harden tore his hamstring and had to play the first 2 games of the Bucks series on one leg. Irving sprained his ankle after tripping over Antetokounmpo's foot in Game 4. But KD's heroics allowed the Nets to force a 7th game, and after Durant hit a 3-point buzzer beater, it appeared that they had advanced. However, KD's huge foot stepped on the line, turning what would have been a crucial 3 points into a 2-pointer, and Brooklyn went on to lose the game and the series in overtime. Before the start of the following season, 72% of NBA general managers predicted that the Nets would win the championship and that KD would receive the most MVP votes. But then, the drama began to fall apart. First, only Kyrie Irving took a position on the coronavirus vaccine, when many people were unable to attend sporting events in New York. Even though all of his teammates had taken the vaccine, he didn't want to comply and receive it. The second issue was James Harden, who was unable to accept that Irving was unwilling to make a sacrifice and take the vaccine for the team's benefit. James publicly requested a trade just 1 year after they paid a king's ransom for his services because he lost faith in the team and their ability to capture the championship. Harden had to go, and the Nets got Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and 2 first-round picks in return. Only 16 of the 113 games in which KD, Irving, and Harden could have played together actually saw all 3 players on the field. It's very disappointing that they lost those games with a record of 13-3 because they never gave themselves a chance. The Nets and other super teams were frequently detested by Charles Barkley, who believed that superstars shouldn't work together or form cahoots. After failing to win a title in Phoenix, Charles must not have a good memory or simply doesn't want to admit that he repeated the same mistake. Chuck decided to pursue titles elsewhere and picked Houston, which had just won a championship the previous year. At the same time Sir Charles was 32 years old and past his prime, he was still a force on the paints. He first formed a Big Three with Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon. Stockton and Malone went in Barkley's place, defeating the Rockets in the Western Finals in 6 games even though Barkley already had a date with Michael Jordan in the NBA Finals. Utah defeated the Rockets once more the following season, and Clyde Drexler then announced his retirement. However, Scottie Pippen was looking for a new team after his final game with the Bulls, and he chose to join Chuck and Hakeem in Houston, where they had a 6-time championship on their roster alongside 2 league MVPs. The Rockets lacked the chemistry that an old team needs to function well. Houston was eliminated from the playoffs in the first round as a result of the constant clash between Barkley and Pippen. Yeah, it's so unfortunate that when NBA teams depend on their Big Threes to make a maximum impact in the season, that's when they receive a shock that leaves them speechless. But do you know what's more unfortunate and shocking? Check out these 2 videos on your screen to find out.